Welcome to the Angus Conversation. I'm your host, Miranda Reiman, with my co-host, Mark McCully, CEO of the American Angus Association. And we are sitting down here in the trade show at the Cattle Industry Convention and Trade Show in Nashville.
Yeah, it's an event every year where we really get an assembly of folks from the beef industry from
all different segments.
All different segments. I was talking to a chef yesterday. We've got packer processors are here, feeders are here, obviously lots of cow-calf producers. And I think this part of the world, when the Cattle Con comes to Nashville, it's a lot of producers are able to drive in. And so this is, I have not heard numbers, but I know it's a big event with a lot of folks, a lot of Angus breeders. We have a booth here in the trade show, and lots of Angus breeders hang out, and some good commercial customers stop in and find out what's new at Angus.
It's definitely one of the biggest outreaches to commercial cattlemen that we have, and we're able to really talk about all the entities are kind of represented in the booth. So if somebody wanders up and has a question on, anything from Gene Max and, Angus Link and any of that, they want to get subscribed to the magazine. We've got everything in between.
Every piece and part now, and we've actually got Pathway to Progress. That's kind of our theme for the booth, of really trying to, I've always said we tend to offer a lot of programs, and I think at times our commercial cattlemen have a little bit of hard time seeing, how do those pieces all fit together, right? And so we've really worked hard of kind of trying to show that pathway of how you would use the different tools, really starting with the purchase of the registered Angus bull, and then how does that unlock opportunities down the road.
Absolutely. So this is also a good place that we get a lot of kind of, state of the industry updates, and we hear a lot of things that are going on that are going to affect our business, from Washington to things going on out in the country. And today we were able to gather together some kind of experts or people with different vantage points on the beef cattle market.
Yeah. When cattlemen get together, we talk about the weather and we talk about the markets, right? and so we're going to talk about the markets. No, I had a great conversation of folks coming at it from an academia standpoint, a stocker cow-calf, and had a cattle feeder. And so, this market is dynamic with lots of variables, lots of moving pieces and parts, and it was good to kind of get to kind of unpack that with our guests.
Listeners probably think that we say this all the time, but that conversation could have went on for another hour and we still wouldn't have covered all the ground. So I think you're really going to enjoy this one. Today on the podcast, we've got three special guests that have a lot of experience in the cattle market. So we're going to start with Dr. Darrell Peel. He's an ag economist from Oklahoma State University. You've been there a long time.
A long time.
You have experience.
I'm going on 37 years at Oklahoma State in the same position.
Very good.
Fantastic.
And your background, you grew up in Montana,
I grew up in Montana. I actually started out life in West Texas, and my dad wanted out of West Texas when I was a little tyke, so we moved to within 100 miles of Canada to get out of West Texas. And so I grew up in Montana on a little cattle operation. I've been around the cattle business all my life, through college as well as other jobs.
Good. And you got your master's and your undergrad there at Montana State?
2 degrees from Montana State, bachelor's and master's. I worked for Colorado State University running a range research station for about 4 years, 4 years, and then went back to the University of Illinois for my PhD.
Good. And of course, well respected in the industry. Whenever something's going on with the cattle market, I kind of think, what does Dr. Peel think about this? So,
well, I write a lot of stuff. I enjoy doing it, and I've been around a long time. So I write a weekly newsletter with some colleagues at OSU, and I'm right at 1,000 articles I've written, I think, in the last 20 some odd years that we've been doing this. So.
Wow, fantastic. Well, there's enough going on in the market. You have a lot to talk about right now.
There's no shortage of topics. I'll tell you.
Lots of content.
Everything's moving right now, for sure.
Yeah,
so as we always like to do when we have academia on, we've paired them with folks out in the field doing the things that you're talking or writing about. So Steve Sunderman of Norfolk, Nebraska, 6th-generation farmer rancher, and one thing in your bio that surprised me, you're a University of Chicago graduate?
That I am, yes.
That's where all Nebraska kids
go.
Yeah,
that feels like not the...
Trust me, I was one of the few. And one of the only farm kids there. But I went out there to major in economics, and I was on the wrestling team. A little bit of culture shock at first being on the south side of Chicago, but
I would imagine so.
Was able to get through it and really enjoyed it and had a great experience. So.
And I bet you know the city better than most people in Nebraska
I
do.
know it pretty well. It was nice to have my farm truck there. I travel all over. Became a bit of a foodie out there, so if you're looking for Rex, let me know.
Very good. So you're the president of your family farm there.
Yep.
Tell us just a little bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, we got a family farm and cattle operation, cattle feedlot, and then more recently cow-calf. So I run that with my parents just outside Norfolk, Nebraska, but we background cattle in a couple states and run some grass cattle and just try to stay out of trouble. So.
Okay. And of course, have held leadership roles in the cattlemen's organizations.
I have,
here in
yeah.
NCBA as
Chaired
well.
the Live Cattle Marketing Committee a handful of years ago.
Yeah. Gene and I were on the board at the same time as officers, and was chair of the Nebraska Cattle Marketing Committee as well as National Cattlemen. And definitely a little bit of a baptism by fire, but yeah, it was a good experience overall.
Very good.
I would say the Live Cattle Marketing Committee is always the committee you go to when you assume there's something.
Well, that's right.
Spirited discussion.
And in terms of being leadership on that committee, it's a little bit of a, drawing the shortest straw is how you end up there.
And Gene Copenhaver over here, you are also no stranger to NCBA, 5th generation cattle rancher from Virginia.
Exactly. I've been part of NCBA policy leadership for 12 years, and served with Steve. And Steve's famous for chairing the 6-hour meeting in Denver several years ago.
The infamous summer meeting.
He knows how to handle people, and my only problem with Steve.
And he's still here to talk about it.
I tried to send him some of our good yearling steers to him to feed in Nebraska, but he's not took me up on it yet.
Well, we can negotiate here today and see if we get the deal.
Tell me when the brace comes down, Gene.
That's what we're going to talk about here today, but also have an extensive background in industry with your experience as an ag loan officer.
Yeah, I was an ag lender for 38 years. Great career, great customers, covered 5 to 7 states most time, mostly cattle customers. I don't miss banking, but I do miss my customers and miss the people in the industry I worked with, and taught me a lot about the cattle industry because it was a very diverse set of people that I worked with, and it was very helpful for my leadership positions within NCBA. But I was a full-time cattleman. I had, like a lot of our producers, commercial and purebred, I was working 2 jobs at one time, and the whole industry is still doing that, and we need to still continue doing that to sustain this industry.
And speaking of leadership roles that it prepared you for, you're about to take on a big one.
Yeah, this afternoon I'm going to be president of NCBA, so I'm looking forward to it, looking forward to traveling the country even more, and it's this how different God-given assets we all have. And we do things different, but we're different landscapes, I say, but same people. Just rural people in America is just great people. I used to think it was Southern hospitality, but it's rural hospitality. Everybody takes you in like family, and it's been great for me.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we appreciate that leadership, and I know for many, they understand these volunteer positions, they require you to be gone a lot. Have you estimated how many days? I got to meet your son here earlier. How many days that you are going to be on the road in the next year?
Past presidents have served. Some of them go up to 200 days or over 200 days, but I've seen my near schedule, but I have no idea.
You're just going to take it week
they
to
won't
week.
tell you all of it.
Why
They
worry
don't
about
wanna-
it now? You can't change it.
I'm very blessed to have my son Will back on the operation. It's a stocker operation there in Southwest Virginia, and he's very, very blessed to have him there. And he owns more of the operation than I do now, and we're looking at succession planning, so he'll have it all here someday.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to having all this expertise around the table to talk about the cattle market. It is, so fun to talk about right now because everybody's optimistic and in good spirits, but we also know that means that we need to be looking ahead. So I guess maybe start out by just letting us know, historic prices have really caused that optimism. What do you think is the single biggest factor on today's cattle market?
Well,
I look right to Dr. Peel too.
You looked at me, so I'll jump in here. I mean, it comes down to a supply-driven market right now. I mean, we got here because of adverse weather conditions over the last several years. We didn't intend to be this small as an industry. The industry is naturally cyclical. It's been cyclical for 150 years. But when you go back to 2019, which was the last peak in the cow herd and in the total cattle herd, the beef cow herd, and we knew there would be some cyclical liquidation. At the time, I described it as I thought it was going to be more of a plateau than a real liquidation because it didn't look like that severe. But by 2020, 2020 into 2021, the drought kicked in, and around the country, pretty much everybody experienced drought conditions, somewhere in that period, if not much of that period. And so, we were forced to do things and bring these numbers down, and here we are, even smaller than we were the last cyclical low, which was in 2014. And again, that one was driven by drought as well. We didn't intend to be that small then. It set up record prices then, and this time it's even more extreme. I was going to say 1.1 million head smaller, but that was 2025's number. I got to go subtract another 1% out of that beef cow herd. I haven't even done that yet for my talking points here. But so, we're in a very challenging supply situation, and that results obviously in a very dynamic market situation, especially for cow-calf producers. Yeah, it's a lot of fun right now, and we're seeing unprecedented things we've never seen. For the rest of the industry, there are some more challenges because pretty much everybody else is in a margin situation. And so depending on who you are and where you are, some of those margins are a little bit tricky right now.
And absolutely,
Steve?
you guys are probably,
So now we look
you
at
guys are
Steve.
feeling that?
And Gene.
Dr. Phil, it's interesting you bring up 2000 and what was it, 14, 15 was our last?
2014 was the
last
low. Yeah, that
in
was
the
our
cow
cyclical
herd.
low. Yep.
Just thinking back, to a decade ago, the optimism in the industry coming out of that was unbelievable. You look at what we had for herd growth and retention in 14 and 15, even into 16, compared to today.
Yeah.
It could not be more night and day different.
Yeah, that's exactly correct.
And it's, as a young producer, it's kind of interesting watching because, there's a lot of things to be optimistic about. Look at what beef demand has done in the last 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know a single person in the country that would have guessed we'd have the beef demand we have today. Right. It is incredible.
It is amazing.
Everybody's crystal balls did not work because they
we've
said
been monitoring it
that's right.
continuously since COVID, looking for signs of any problems on the demand front, and we just don't see any. It's just continued to march up.
That's right. And so, just looking at this herd regrowth, it's just amazing me to see the challenges that are there and the reasons why we're not seeing anything similar to what we saw in 14, 15, and 16.
Yeah.
We had the inventory report last week. You can argue about how reliable that is or not. But just as a trend line, it shows what everybody's kind of been feeling, and that's that it's not really happening very rapidly.
No, it isn't. And, with the benefit of hindsight, I would argue now that the 2014 to 2019 herd expansion was actually historically rapid.
Yeah.
I think we know at least some of the reasons why that was. This one is shaping up to be historically slow. So cattle cycles are regular. They're, you certainly look at them, but they also are, every one of them is unique in some way. And this one is turning out to be just a remarkably slow turn for a variety of reasons, I think. But, it's playing out in a much different time frame. I mean, we could have started expansion 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Didn't happen last year. It's not going to happen this year.
Right.
We don't have enough heifers to possibly grow this year, and not much in 2027.
Right.
So we're pushing this thing off to the end of the decade now before we could potentially change numbers, and we still don't have any definitive evidence. We got a few more replacement heifers. So we're probably dabbling in heifer retention.
Right.
But that's really about all it is.
Is it regional? Do you think it's regional?
I haven't looked at the heifer stuff per se, but if you look at the top 10 beef cow states in this last report, 7 out of 10 of them got smaller last year.
Yeah.
Only 3 of the top 10 beef states actually increased their cow herd last year.
Yeah.
And I think it's about the same on the heifer side. So, it's somewhat regional, and some of that's still the fact that we have got drought issues.
We've
got a lot of concerns.
Yep.
At the end of the day, fundamentally, that's going to be the thing that determines what we can do, regardless of what we might like to do.
Yeah.
I got a question. The effect of dairy on beef on this inventory the last 5 years, and what if we didn't have dairy on beef, or if the future of it, and what's it going to do to our inventory situation?
Well, from the standpoint of overall inventory, those cows were having calves all along, and those dairy steers were coming into the industry, and the culled dairy heifers were coming into the industry. So we haven't really changed overall numbers that much. Now we do have more dairy cows right now by about 200,000 head than we've had in 20-something years. But the dairy herd only varies by a couple 100,000 head a year, whereas, we're down 4 million head on beef cows since the 2019 peak, just over 4 million head. And so those beef on dairy calves are built into our numbers. They're in the cattle inventory, they're in the calf crop numbers that we look at, they're in the feeder supply estimates that we make, and they're in the cattle on feed numbers. So we're already counting them. I mean, they're important. In fact, given how small beef supplies are, they're proportionately more important. But they've always been there. They just look a little different now. They got more black and less white on them now.
Yeah.
You know, Gene, and that kind of goes to the other thing I've been finding really interesting just watching is, you know, what has our kill been down the last year or two, Dr. Peel?
Oh, last year fed
Percentage.
slaughter was down 5.5 to
5.5.
5.6%, something
And how
like
about
that.
domestic production? Only down.
Down 3.7% for beef production.
Which tells us that we're making this cattle bigger.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
as a feed yard, it is, you look at my cost of gain versus market price, it's never been wider, ever.
Yeah.
And so the incentive to make these cattle as big as possible has been really interesting to watch how that's affected the market and how that's affected the whole supply chain. We've got cattle that are closing out on levels I would have never even imagined. A, that we could do it. B, that the packer would be willing to take them.
Yeah.
You know, especially on heifers. You know, who would have thought that I'd try to make a heifer weigh 1,500 pounds?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
usually 1,400 was like the drop dead level.
Yep.
And then I've seen heifers bring up to 16.
Yeah.
And so it just makes you wonder, okay, long term, you know, how's that going to affect the industry? Are we going to, what is going to be the new norm
Well,
as we move forward?
And I
Yeah.
was talking to a cattle feeder the other day and had some data and showing me, we were looking at conversions and intakes on the last 6 to 8 weeks on feed. The other thing that's different, as he would say, 20 years ago, you would see a 20% drop off in intakes and conversions. Those cattle they were done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
These
They
cattle
just
aren't
keep
done.
going.
Some of these cattle
No,
still
they're-
have,
they've got
they got a little more
top.
room to them, you know, which is also maybe a little
I think
concerning.
the answer would be where we go is where's the packers going to let this go to,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how big and how their kill floors. You know, some of the modern plants can handle some of these carcasses, and
Yeah.
some of them can't. Some of the older plants.
I think they're limited by their
I
hot
think
box
that's
space right
gonna
now.
be a question that's going to be answered probably this year, I think.
Yeah. Well, the other side of it is, and again, I'm not an animal scientist, so I'm out of my lane already, but I'm going to say this, you know, the thing I'm hearing now more than ever before is we've got some different health challenges that I think is related to the size of these cattle.
Sure.
For many years, and you feed cattle, you know, respiratory disease has been the biggest challenge in the feedlots, but now we're seeing a lot more issues with this late stage cardiac death, and I think there's almost no doubt that that's related to the size of these cattle. Physiologically, we may finally be reaching a limit.
Some biological limits.
I at least for the time being. Now, that doesn't mean we won't change the genetics and go even further at some point, but now about
And there's
30
some
years ago,
welfare
I
issues.
started,
Yep.
yeah, well, there is.
Yeah.
You know, about 30 years ago, I started predicting that cattle wouldn't keep getting bigger, and after being wrong for 25 years, I quit doing that and so I don't know that I know where the limit is, and I thought it would come from economics.
Yeah.
Because, you know, these carcasses are bigger, that means the muscles are bigger. Consumers haven't been asking for bigger steaks for about 25 or 30 years. So we have to do more processing now, we have to do more fabrication to make it all work, but there's not enough economic signals to stop that at this point.
No.
Pounds still trumps everything
Yeah.
else.
Right.
You know, quality is fantastic, of course. But, you know, it may be these physiological animal health issues that winds up being the actual top that we can't really get around. I don't know.
And I mentioned welfare, but I do think that's a serious thing we've got to really keep our eye on. I mean, I hear about more bruising because of the truck designs. It's just cattle
at
getting
some
stuck
point,
in
you
chutes.
get back to
I
your
mean,
point where the whole infrastructure is just not set up for cattle to keep getting bigger.
Yeah.
So the
That's
trucks
right.
aren't bigger. Pens aren't big enough. Alleys aren't big enough. Plants aren't big enough. I mean, everything's got to change according to that.
You know, it's interesting, though, how it's affected my feeder buying decisions. You know, historically, it's always about, okay, what do I think feed conversion and grade will be on these feeder cattle?
Right.
Right? Now it's like, when you're feeding this long, they all grade. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some that are going to do a lot better prime.
Sure.
But we can make them all choice.
Yeah.
We can try and make them all CAB. The question is, what is their out potential, right? So now I'm looking a lot more at frame, okay, can I make these 1,800 pounds potentially?
Yeah.
That wasn't part of my buying decision so much 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to take a quick time out for this word from Angus Media. Are you ready to find your next influential Angus sire? Angus Journal subscribers will receive a free copy of the Angus Bull Book Spring 2026 Angus Sire Directory.
milled right alongside their March edition. The Angus Bull Book is your resource for some of the top genetics in the breed. Don't miss a chance to find your herd's perfect fit. Subscribe to the Angus Journal today and view some of the top genetics in the industry. Visit angusjournal.net to subscribe.
That does raise an interesting question going back to the country then, because from your standpoint, there's no real limit to that, but bigger calves come from bigger cows most of the time, and there is some issues out in the country then in terms of,
Right.
Especially when we talk about
yeah,
drought
you start
and not
talking about
having
cow
forage
efficiency
Yep.
and matching cattle to their environment and so on. And one of my colleagues, David Lohman Dr. Lohman at Oklahoma State, has done a lot of work on cow efficiency. I think we have to watch that because it's always been a balance in this industry between production values versus meat values, carcass values. And that trade-off is still very much with us.
Very important. Yeah, and we have a lot of registered breeders that listen to this and trying to figure out, okay, I just heard you say, Steve, you need a steer that can go, or a heifer that can go to 15, 16, 17, 1,800 pounds, right?
And
I got a commercial customer, I got to make sure I get
them smaller.
Their cow's got to get bred, right? How do we make this work, right? And it's I think a really important
and I think we deal with those, but again, we mentioned the carcass issues and the retailing issues there. About 10, 12 years ago, the prime rib holiday guys started telling us that the steer carcasses were too big to fit in the prime rib roasters at Christmas and New Year's, so they started buying heifer carcasses. Well, 10 years later, the heifer carcasses now are way bigger than the steers were then. Yeah. And so, where do you go now? I'm sure they've probably made some changes, but the point is, again, it has implications for a lot of the system when you make these kind of changes.
Well, and case weights. You talk to the packers what their case weights are. They got to change piece counts in their boxes because of OSHA standards, how heavy these.
You don't even think about that stuff.
It takes a bigger tray to put a bigger steak on, so bigger styrofoam tray, and so the retailers can't put as much meat out. That means you got to have more labor to service the case more frequently. There's just a whole ripple effect of things that happen when all of these things change.
Yeah, what do we do with their extra fat too?
Well, right now we are getting a lot of that extra pounds. We put about 50 pounds on steer carcass weights in the last 2 years. A bunch of that is fat, and some of that's just short-term market. We will pull back a little bit from that at some point. It may be 3 years down the road, but we will sometime probably. But we've also had a very strong tallow market that has offset, and really made that less of a penalty than it probably would have been at one point in time.
And that market should get a lot better with their new dietary guidelines that came out last week, and
fat's not being demonized quite like it once
was.
Putting beef back there and then turning it upside down. No one expected that. And as far as demand factor, I think it might be the biggest thing that's happened for demand in a long time. We worked 40 years on demand, but this might be bigger than anything.
Yeah.
Wait, Gene. Oh, go ahead, Gene. The thing I try to push back on, now that we're making these cattle bigger, the common thing I'm hearing is, well, we just don't need as many cows now. If we're going to make cows this big, we just don't need as many cows. And my argument is, well, if we're going to have this good a beef demand, why can't we just produce more beef? Right? Why can't we try and get back to, we'll never maybe get back to where our peak was here in the last 10 years, but get back to a number where we can actually produce more beef than what we were before and actually get to more customers.
So I guess to that point, Gene, when you think about, we talked about drought being a limiter of rebuilding this cow herd, right? And we're sending, we've talked about the historic cycles that may or may not be as in play as they once were. So we're sending this big economic signal back to rebuild. What are the other barriers you're seeing with cow-calf producers in particular? Why? Is it age of producer? Is it availability? Is it...
I think it's capital requirements, to be honest with you right now. Being an ex-banker too, an ag banker, there's tools out there bankers can use, but there needs to be a lot more tools that us as an industry need to work on with the government actually, and we got to bring it next generation on with some of those new tools and expand some of the tools we already have, whether it's risk management, whether it's interest rate or interest rate programs, and we got to work on the other side on transition with these older producers. We got to find tools that will help them get out at a reasonable level where it doesn't all go to taxes. And whether it's capital gains or estate, or we worked on the estate part, but there's still capital gains taxes out there that will eat a lot of older producers up if they ever get out. So there was some things in the right before the big beautiful bill that wasn't included in the big beautiful bill that would help on that side for the older generation to get out. So we need to look at those tools, but the capital requirement is the biggest thing.
I think it is, and behind that, I think a lot of producers and lenders still have very much in their mind what happened 10 years ago in the last cycle.
Yeah,
and
this lender does.
Yeah, I bet you that's right. And so and we clearly overdid it that time in terms of some of the values on these breeding animals. We're not doing that this time. We haven't yet, and I don't know that we will, because I think producers and maybe more importantly lenders are really being cautious this time.
Yeah,
and as well they probably should in some cases, but and the capital constraints are not only on producers, they're actually on lending institutions.
Yeah.
Ag banks are finding that they're tapped out. It doesn't take a very big cattle account anymore to tap out your bank resources, and so that's an issue too.
Yeah, and that's the reason we need tools. We got the USDA has a great guaranteed loan program that helps lenders with their risk management on ag producers, and we need to expand that program because it's a no net loss to the government on that program. Always has been. And I was in the secretary's office here for Christmas, and I told her that, and I don't think she realized that. And so hopefully we can get the ball rolling and get more capital where the ag lenders are protected, and get more capital out to especially younger producers and all producers.
Yeah, Gene, it's kind of shocking to me just talking to some cow-calf guys in Nebraska. It's like, okay, if I go out and buy a bred heifer, young bred cow, say I pay $4,000 for it, how much equity is your banker going to give you for that animal?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he's giving me $1,500.
Yeah.
I'm going, you got to be kidding me. So you're telling me that you're out $2,500 on your balance sheet from the get-go?
On one.
Yeah, just on one head.
Yeah.
And it's like, we expect guys that want to regrow the cow herd underneath that environment. Like, it's a huge issue.
Sometimes I feel like when I'm sitting around with people generation my dad's age, they like to say, well, kids your age and younger don't like to work anymore, and that's why it is. And you hear these, it's like, I don't think that's it. I don't think, maybe they don't have the stomach for as much risk, but even if they do, they don't have somebody who believes in them to,
Well, we have to do business different than we did a generation or two ago. So it's not just a handshake anymore. The numbers actually got to work at some level.
Yeah.
And increasingly, there's just a lot more scrutiny. I think a lot of it is just this thing is so different this time. There's a lot of sticker shock right now on producers. And again, I think it comes from that memory of what happened the last time. And, there is a feeling, I hear it all the time, that, I can't pay that much for a heifer. In my mind, if you look at it, and it depends on your price expectation, I don't think we're overvalued yet. I think there's room for them to go up, and they will eventually in order for us to expand. But it's absolute dollars matters a lot. I'm seeing more producers that are operating not so much on price per hundredweight, but on dollars per head.
Yep.
We had a lot of guys last year that sold calves unweaned, unpreconditioned in the summer because they just got scared that market was going to get away from them, and they knew they weren't marketing the calves the way they should be marketed, but it's still more dollars, and they did give up something by not doing those things, and yet it's still more dollars than they've ever seen before, so they were happy to take that.
Yeah. Can I add one other thing, Dr. Peel?
You bet.
Uncastrated.
Oh, yeah.
As a stocker producer, we do buy a lot of bulls, and it's normally what we buy is about 50% bulls. Last year it's 75% bulls.
No
in
kidding.
our operation.
I think we even saw a little bit of that in Oklahoma last year. Again, they didn't get them worked.
Yeah, they did.
And if you ask them, they know they're not doing what we've been telling them for 50 years to do. But again,
they're just saying, hey, I'm not being greedy.
They're just saying, this thing is just too good. I'm just going to go with it. And again, on a dollars per head basis, it's never been this good, so I'm going to take it, even though I know I'm probably leaving some on the table. And
on the same instance, as a stocker producer, that's our value add right up front. That's $20 a hundred and $100 a head, and that's for us. That's we look at that like that. Going back to what you said about the next generation, I would have to disagree. I think the next generation are really technology driven, ready for change, relationship driven. I have a lot of hope for the next generation, and so.
I'd love to hear that.
I've heard that all my life, and I was part of that. One of those generations. They said, wouldn't work, didn't know what's going on, whatever. And I think we all here sitting at the table are part of that generation. I've heard that all my life. And as a banker, I got to hire a lot of young bankers, and man, they're sharp. Kids this day are sharp, and they know how to use technology. They know how to use equipment on the operation to make it more efficient, because we also have a labor issue.
Right, absolutely.
And we have to say that that's part of our solution is more technology and more equipment. That equipment's not cheap. That's a thing. It goes back to the capital issue.
Yeah.
I disagree with that. That says the next generation is not capable of coming on.
I like that.
So when you guys think about the rebuild, willing to make some predictions of, do we get to 30 million cows, 31 million cows, 29 million? Do you guys, where is the top end of the rebuild? Do you guys?
Depends on how big they get.
Well, I'm looking at Dr. Peel here.
Because I don't want to ask about structural changes and what that creates, right? But
I mean, and you said it depends on how big. Obviously, we do get more pounds per animal now, so we aren't going to rebuild, and you can take that all the way back to the mid-'70s when the numbers peaked. But at the same time, we're clearly smaller than we need to be from a market standpoint. Right. The market's telling us that we're smaller than we need to be. Are we going to, how much is that? I don't know. And to be honest with you, haven't had a bottom and really started the clock on that rebuild. So it kind of depends on that. But, I'm going to say we need to rebuild at least 2 million head. I think we're going to regrow half of what we're down from. And again, part of that comes back to maybe we can produce as much beef, maybe even with less than that. I haven't actually tried to do the math on that. But why stop there? I think we have a lot of market potential. I think we have a lot of global market potential. The U.S. market is more mature. That doesn't mean we don't have any potential here, but I think we have a lot of market potential globally, and I think we should be, looking to try to be in a position to utilize that and to take advantage of that.
Yep.
So, yep.
Yeah, I agree. And talking to U.S. meat exports, they said the price points and with different countries have changed so much where they knew the price points and they were out, but now they don't even ask the price point, they're asking for more product.
Yeah.
So it's changed globally the last 10 years tremendously.
Yeah.
No, I don't disagree, Dr. Peel. What's in it, you talk about $4,000 not being too much for a bred heifer. You look at a $400 to $4,500 bred heifer, feeder cow can drop a long ways, and you still are okay paying that.
Yeah.
And so the incentive's there to do it. You just need to find someone who's willing to calve that bred heifer.
And it's a combination of the physical constraints, the what's the country look like, drought issues, drought threat. Mm-hmm. I was in Wyoming in December for the stock growers meeting, and I had a couple of producers that said, we had a pretty good year this last year, but we're still marginal enough that I'm not going to get very aggressive.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just not willing to step out there yet. We can't get a clean break. And, the big difference in this low and this rebuild from the one that happened in 2014 and to 2019 is that drought was so severe in the southern plains. All of the losses happened basically in Texas and Oklahoma and the immediately surrounding area. The northern half of the country was actually acting like we were going to expand, and they did. They started saving heifers while we were in drought, so that when we finally broke the drought and it was a pretty clean break, man, we were ready to go. That's why we had that, I now call it a jackrabbit herd expansion. But that was because half of the country was getting ready to do that. We have not been doing that. Everybody's been in drought, basically. Mm-hmm. And so the pull down has been much more broad-based, and the recovery is much more broad-based and takes much more time. And I think that's a big part of why this one is playing out much slower than the last time.
Yeah. So with the situation we're at today, we lost one plant. What do you guys see in terms of structural changes over the next 2 to 3 years? Are we going to lose more capacity? How's the feeding industry structure change? What big structural changes do you guys see on the horizon? We're going to reduce hours. Can we reduce hours and get through this thing without losing any more plants? We got some more plants coming online too.
I think we got to look at the plants coming on in the modern and how efficient they are, and how many of them are actually going to come on, and then go from there and see what the big four, what they decide to do.
Yeah.
But that'll be the answer for me is see what these new ones come that are produced our own, and then see what happens on the flip side.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you never know what's going on in boardrooms, right? We're not privy to that. But, you know, this is playing out so slow, and you just never know how deep the pockets are and how deep the commitment is to try to ride this out. So I think we're still vulnerable, potentially, to losing some more capacity, at least. And maybe we do it in a way, you know, losing one shift out of the Amarillo plant means it doesn't go away, and that can come back as soon as numbers come back. Maybe we do more of that, but that's also a pretty expensive process.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, the big four don't own a lot of plants that are very new.
Yeah.
That infrastructure is 40 years old or older, 40 to 60 years old. And so, you know, are there more plants like that Lexington plant that, I don't know. I think we're vulnerable to that going forward, and we do need some new investment in infrastructure. And if we lose enough plants, we'll have to make that investment somewhere down the road, because we're going to hit the limit quicker on the backside of this thing. That's not going to happen real fast, but we would eventually, and maybe that's what it takes to stimulate some. You know, we've got a little bit of new investment now, but not really in our mainline big operations, and so maybe that's what it's going to take to get that. It'll be painful for everybody if that happens.
That's exactly right. And you know, there's a lot of fringe packing plants out there. They're in areas that don't have a lot of cattle feed numbers.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think those are definitely the most vulnerable at this point, especially some of the swing plants that rely on a lot of cows.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to have an increase in slaughter cows here for a while.
Oh no.
Right? And so those guys are going to continue to be under the gun.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of structural changes, you know, I don't see these carcass weights really going back anywhere close to where we were before.
No.
You know, I look at my break-evens, you know, for every 100 pounds I put on a steer, you know, that increase, you know, it gives me another $4 on my break-even. So I have all the incentive.
I can do that math. Yeah, right?
It's not
Keep
hard.
going.
It's not hard. And, you know, so you look at, we increase the weight where heavy discounts go in. A lot of them, it doesn't matter. They're not putting them on anyways. You know, you can even pay a lot of heavyweight discounts and still be better off. So, yeah, I think the weights are going to stay elevated probably going forward.
Yeah. You know, one of the things, again, bigger carcasses does mean more processing, more fabrication issues, and so on. So, you know, one of the things we're going to see is maybe a little shift in focus in some cases away from just packing and breaking carcasses to more of that further processing. You know, I mean, again, these steaks are just bigger than people can eat or afford to eat.
Right.
And so, you know, we're doing lots of things. And, you know, about 15 years ago, I started joking that when we got to having to market ribeye nuggets, we probably had gone too far. But, you know, we're essentially there in some cases. Now we're pulling off the spinalis muscle. You don't get a ribeye anymore, you get a center cut. Yeah. And, you know, those kinds of things. And you know, we're trying to make it work.
Right.
And there'll be more of those kind of challenges going forward, I think. And maybe that's where some of these companies will try to shift their focus and pick up some on that side, right, relative to, you know, the losses at the primary processing area.
Yeah, well, we've already seen it, like a chain like Texas Roadhouse. They have what they call a thick New York strip. What it is a New York strip cut in half. Yeah. And that's what they're doing, and they've been very successful at it. Any place I go to a Texas Roadhouse, they're backed up to get in. And it's
no
still,
matter what time of day, too.
You know, and our product is so good, and we have so many choice and prime now.
Well, it's funny how your perspective changes. You know, there was a time when we couldn't think about not marketing a ribeye whole or a fillet. But, you know, you get used to the idea. I used to also joke that, you know, if we have to start cutting them in half, then there was going to be a big increase in demand for carrots and asparagus or things that you could lay against that cut edge so it looked okay on the plate, you know. Yeah. But, it changes. We get used to it. And, you know, perspectives change. Some of the real top-end steakhouses are going to be the last ones to give up that traditional-looking, you know, whole muscle cut, but they have to make changes too, because these things
and our consumers changing too. I mean, if you look at consumers, a millennial consumer likes variety. They're willing to try lots of different things. They don't need a strip steak or a ribeye that necessarily looks like the one that probably all of us are used to.
Exactly.
You know, and we talk about the downside of carcass weight on these cuts. There's an upside. I mean, you start talking about yields on tenderloins get better when you get these bigger tenderloins. Some of these single muscles like flat irons and terrace majors, they're a little bit of a challenge on a 600-pound carcass. On a 900-pound carcass, you start getting some things that you can do.
Yeah,
you got some value there. So
what I've
noticed
in these higher end restaurants is they're doing their presentation different when they bring it out.
That's what they're doing.
It's more of a family style presentation with different cuts, and they're sliced for you. And
well,
I think that's what they're looking at.
They've started marketing them as a pair, a couple,
a steak for two.
Steak for two, or comes automatically with a bag to take it home. It's 2 or 3 meals or whatever. But so we're making those changes, and I think some of the things that were a little hard to imagine 10 or 15 years ago, we're doing them.
Well,
and that's the thing about this industry. We always do what we have to do, right?
Yeah.
That's right. And so it's going to be, it's interesting to see what's happened on the retail side. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on the cow-calf side too, right, with these big finish weights. And we've been talking about having moderate size, efficient cows. But at the end of the day, pounds pay, right? And so if you can get that calf to be 50 pounds bigger at weaning, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see how quickly that's adopted on the cow-calf side too.
And what about, go ahead.
For the purebred operators too, it's going to be a lot about bull selection for these
curve benders.
It's going to, where are you going to go? You're going to go for a larger frame bull, back to a larger frame bull, which we've got around away from, but with a lot of product still in it too.
And with that, we're going to take a quick time out for this word from Angus Media.
A sale book isn't just a sale book. You have options. No matter if you want our team to design the sale book, handle it yourself, or upload a completed book, capture to publish, our online sale book portal is the answer. Big or small, private treaty, or a live auction, this online portal is here to serve you. Give us a call at 816-383-5200 to get started today, or visit angusmedia.org to learn more.
And what about the technologies at the feeding level that could help you get to that, get them in smaller and grow them quicker, faster?
It's really made us think about, hey, how do we start these cattle? How long do we keep them on a grow ration? How should we be trying to do more stocking with these cattle before we bring them into the yard? And how does it change our implant strategy? Yeah. It's amazing on an 8-weight steer. 5 years ago we were maybe finished for 180 days. Then it was 200. Then it was 220. We've seen steers go out with 280 days on feed.
Yeah.
Trust me, we did not have the implant schedule set up properly for those cattle. And so you throw on Experior and other feed additives on top of that, it's really allowing us to keep efficiency at the end of the feeding period.
Yeah. Sure.
Structurally, do you see anything in our stocker grower segment changing much? I mean, will that always be kind of resource dependent? Is there anything going on in the confinement side of things?
We're grass based, so but our grass is pretty dang good there where I live, so we can make them bigger, and we have been making them bigger. We have marketed some 1,000-pound grass cattle, and and they're still very efficient on grass. Some of our most efficient cattle are some 8-weights we turn out in the spring, actually, for the spring flush. And, they're up close to 3 pounds a day on some of the gains, 2.75, and they're out 6 weeks, and then they're shipped. But it's changed the way we look at things as far as putting a bigger product out there for the feedlots, and if they will buy them.
Yeah.
Well, right. You feel like
I knew we'd get back around to that.
you hit that 900,000 mark, and you feel like you get penalized from being too big coming off grass.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these feeders are looking for that animal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's changed a lot.
It's changed a lot.
It used to be if you went over 8, you were in penalties, and now
right.
it's 9, and then 1,000, and
right.
And back to the cow-calf levels. The challenge is there. We talked about weaning weights. If you can get that, one of the things that we've seen, for the most part, the data really shows that cow weights have gone up and weaning weights have not kept up with them in most cases. We've not seen the commensurate. And so can we do that? We probably can. That means some things differently. And I think there's all kinds of exciting things. Again, it's not my area, it's not my science, but some of this fetal programming, we're beginning to understand, I think, this is what I read at least, that issues that we've been dealing with a lot, all the way to, particularly at the feedlot level and the stocker level, a lot of health issues and so on, are really originating at the cow-calf level. And there's a lot of potential if we understand that gestational process, matching the cows and making sure nutritionally that they're done right at that level, we can change the value of those calves and the weight of those calves all the way through the system and make it work. So I think there's a lot of physical or production things that we can do that we haven't done, maybe because we haven't really had the incentives to do that up until this point, but we're getting there.
Right.
So we've talked about this kind of state of the markets, and we've talked about the structural changes and those kind of things, but I want to talk a little bit about risk and volatility in this market. Is there more volatility than ever? Yes.
You can look at it two ways. Absolute terms, yes, there's more volatility. If you look at it in percentage terms, it actually hasn't increased that much, for the most part. Now, when you throw in some external stuff and things that are completely outside the market, that's a little different deal. But just in terms of the volatility we're seeing, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Doctor. You look at.
I did it as if you just do a quick percentage, the volatility.
You look
is
at
about
this
the same.
market trend the last 3 to 5 years. It is the most consistent, sustained rally we have ever had in the history of the cattle industry.
Yeah.
It is amazing. And when you look at that chart.
Yeah.
So on a percentage term, it actually has been, I say, relatively low. Now we know that when you get to a cycle high, that changes really quick.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, at some point,
exactly, wherever that's going to be.
And the thing is, 3% on today's prices is still a whole lot bigger.
It's a big number.
That's right.
And so for producers, on average, prices are higher. On average, we're still moving higher. But you know what? Producers don't sell on average prices. They sell a given day or week.
Exactly.
And that's where, my message has been is I don't care. We're in a bull market and that hasn't changed, but you still need to do some risk management because if it's the day or the week you got to sell when either the market's just doing what it's doing or externally we're getting a lot of influences that cause short-term shocks in the market, then you better have some way to protect.
Well,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was just right. Real PC there.
The sticker shock is real though, right? So when you're looking at, say, these LRP pricing, how much it's going to cost you per head to protect that animal, you look at, oh my God, that's a lot of money per head.
Right.
Yeah.
But I keep reminding guys that just remember what you're protecting.
Yeah. Exactly.
What is the margin you're protecting on that animal?
Yeah. Exactly.
$100 sounds like a lot per head to do this, but you're protecting maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
Or 1,500.
Yeah.
And don't lose sight of that.
Yeah, and going back to the percentages, I think it's perception. They don't think about the percentage.
No.
It's all perception.
Well, that's what academics do. We
Yeah,
look at it that way.
But I looked at it the same way. It's all what's in your mind. You see that big jump that day or up or down, and it's all perception.
Yeah,
So
I think that's part of the whole sticker shock we're seeing just because we've never been here before.
Right.
And so people see these values and they just can't deal with it. We can't wrap our mind around. And again, the dollars per head is just so phenomenal.
Right.
Whether you're buying or selling,
Right.
either way, right? And so it's just it's a real mental jump to really get into this thing and see it for what it is and what it how it's working as opposed to just having a historical perspective.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it all goes back to risk management and how well you sleep at night. We have done it for 40 years, some type of risk management. We've tried it all, but right now we're LRP people, and it's a big cost. It
is. As
far as per head cost, that's the highest cost we have right now. It's amazing, but we're protecting our livelihood.
A lot of dollars on the table.
We borrow money. I have a banker just like I used to be a banker. They makes them feel a lot better too.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely it does.
Do you see stronger adoption of the tools, LRP in particular, the instruments of risk management? Are we
getting better?
Are we getting better? I mean, what's the...
We're getting better, but we're still not where we need to be.
Right.
And I think...
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but my perception is that we're using it a lot more. LRP took 20 years to kind of take hold, but once it has, I think it's really accelerated quite a lot. And I'm pretty sure the numbers are there. I just don't know them off the top of my head.
Are they being required? Is it a lender forced?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
Is it education and just awareness?
I think a lot of, and again, it's just we're in this unprecedented thing, and producers are, I described it, markets are scary good. They're good, and we're excited about it, but we're also a little bit scared, just because we've never been here before, it's uncharted waters, and so I think a lot of guys that have not done it before are saying, "Man, what can I do?" You know, and they're asking more questions in many cases.
And I think they understand LRP better than they ever have.
Easy.
You know, see anything with the CME products, it's a lot easier to understand as an insurance product.
Yeah.
But that sticker shock on it it's
well,
tough.
and you know, after you pay in for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years in a row, you're going, why am I paying in?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe I should take off this year and just not pay that premium, right?
Yeah.
That's going on in a lot of people's heads, and it's like it's hard to stay the course.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You don't want to have to use it, but you need it.
Well, that's just it. When they start getting into that mentality, and I've heard the same thing, you know, and it's like, well, do you need to drop your house insurance this year, and you know, or your car insurance, or you know, I had guys years ago tell me, I bought puts 2 or 3 years and they never paid, so I quit doing it. And I said, you know, that's kind of like bitching that you haven't collected on your life insurance yet. I mean, that's not the way you. That's not why we have insurance.
Yeah.
You have it because you can't afford not to have it, and it is a cost of doing business.
Well, that happened in 15 and 16 after 14. Everybody in the industry said, well, we're at a new plateau here, price plateau. And I'm not pointing fingers.
No, I was wrong on that one. I'll be the first to admit it.
But not only you, but the whole industry was saying that we're at a new plateau, and they were listening to that, so they didn't protect themselves, and that's when I had customers get in trouble because of that.
Yeah. And you know, the USDA is going to continue to increase subsidy levels, I think, on those products.
Yeah, we keep sweetening it.
And so there's going to continue to be as much incentive as ever to utilize them. And I hope guys take a hard look at it.
Yeah, and should be. It should be.
Yeah, they really should.
USDA needs to look at that.
Yeah.
So from a cattle feeder's perspective, Steve, are you able to protect yourself as much? I mean, I look at some of these break-evens, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. And sleep at night.
What do you mean, Mark? Are you trying to say we're buying cattle that don't make money? Is that what you're alluding to?
I just love your optimism. Yeah.
That's why he started the cow-calf side of the business.
That's right. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. No, when we get to tight feeder cow supplies like this, it happens every time, right? And you just, as a cattle feeder, try to stay disciplined and not bet on the come if you can.
Yeah.
But with cheap cost of gains and with what weights we've been able to do, you've been allowed to buy and pay prices you never thought you could have.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I'll look at it.
Worked up to this.
Well, that's right. I'll look at it.
It may change a little bit.
It may change, yeah. Well, I look at a price on sale market, I go, oh my gosh, how could they have done that? And then I run the numbers like, well, if I take them to $1,700 and I use 90 cents a pound, it's like, oh, they actually don't lose money. I can't believe this. Yeah. Now, you're right, Dr. Peel. Like, that weight may change, that cost gain might change, but in the meantime,
I think the feeder numbers is going to catch up as much as anything. So
that too.
We just can't hold the inventory.
Yeah.
And frankly, you've done it better for the last 2 years than I thought you could.
So. Well, cattle feeders,
he's surprised you're still in business.
Cattle feeders get a bad rap, but we're very charitable. We have no problem sharing profits.
Oh, yeah, no, that's always been true. If there were any profits, they usually bid them out of feeder cattle pretty darn quickly.
We're really good at it.
Yeah, exactly. But, the numbers thing, I mean, the calf crop's been getting smaller for 7 years, and yet feedlot inventories went for about 24 months where they didn't, on average, change.
Yeah.
And we were extending days on feed and doing other, kinds of tricks. And I get it. I mean, that's the incentive, right? But I think the numbers are catching up with us now, and so these feedlot inventories are falling faster. It's going to be trickier going forward, I think, than it has been. It's great that it's worked as well as it has,
right?
For the last 2 to 3 years.
There will be an adjustment eventually.
But I think I think it's going to get a little more tricky going forward.
Yeah.
At that level.
So this conversation has been so fun, but I know everybody's on tight schedules here.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask just
we
one
knew
kind
this
of
was going to be a problem when we put
right,
this together.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy, we have
so
a lot of things we could talk about.
So you've got to answer this short before we always end the podcast on a random question of the week, but I kind of want a wrap-up question first, and that's: are you optimistic or cautious about the long-term profitability of the beef industry?
Am I allowed to be cautiously optimistic?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
It's a hedge, but...
Yeah.
No, I
that's a non-answer, actually.
It's a non-answer.
I'm kidding. No, go ahead.
I think we've been very fortunate the last couple of years in the industry, just with the market that we've had. And so I think, as we move forward, my big thing is just keeping your equity together, taking advantage of opportunities to get them, but just make sure that you're using some sort of risk management to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you can keep doing what you're doing.
I'm optimistic, and that's not short term, but long term. I'm very optimistic with demand, with new dietary guidelines. I'm optimistic about the next generation coming on, but we have a lot of work to do to make that happen. And I'm big on risk management. I think we need to promote that. A lot more people need to be doing it. We have a uptick in people doing it, but we have a lot more producers that need to jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah, I'm pretty optimistic too. I mean, I've been bullish longer than I've ever imagined I could be in this industry. Basically, my outlook story hasn't changed in about 4 years now, and it's not changing going forward for the foreseeable future. And it will sometime, I presume, but we're in a very different environment. So I think, short term, depending on where you are in the industry, some of the margins are going to be trickier, but fundamentally, I think we're pretty optimistic for the industry. In terms of that potential long-term growth and size of the industry, I think we've got lots of potential. Again, largely based on a global market. We've got to get some of that straightened out, get some trade relationships built and stabilized a little bit, but I think we have a lot of potential.
I love ending on that kind of a note because it's good messages all around.
And I guess just a final, we've talked so much about supply, but I mean, we didn't really hardly touch on demand, right? And that's obviously another enormous part of where we're at, and I think another reason to be optimistic. I guess, of where we at. The quality of product and the consumer response to our product is one I think we could be excited about.
Well, the industry, deserves a lot of credit for the way we've changed. The quality has improved tremendously in the last 15 years in this industry, 15 to 20 years. And I think the consumer response to that is testament to that. And so, we don't have a demand problem in this country. Consumers are buying the beef. Beef production is down. And I'll say this because I always do with audiences, and somebody somewhere in the media is going to say, well, beef consumption is falling, so beef demand is a problem. Beef, per capita consumption is not a demand measure, it's a supply measure. And you can't eat it if you don't produce it. So we're going to be down for a couple of years just because we're not producing as much beef, but I think we're going to price it even higher because the consumer demand is there, and we'll ration smaller supplies with even higher prices.
Sure. Yep. So all the reasons to be optimistic. So random question of the week, we always end on that. I want to know something that you either learned growing up on your operation or in college that is no longer true today. Something that was just definitely fact, and now you're like, the business has changed enough, that's no longer true today. Or
that's a tough one.
Yeah. Nobody's got it.
I could go for, growing up in eastern Nebraska, we're the heart of, row crop country. Yeah. And, it would have been a sin if you'd ever say you do anything underneath a pivot besides grow corn and soybeans. Mm-hmm. And, given what we have for opportunities in the cattle industry, you can run cattle underneath pivots. Yeah. And you'll make money or not lose money, right, versus what the alternative is. So that's been a big game changer for us, is seeing what the potential that can be.
Yeah.
I guess one thing for me is I graduated from Virginia Tech in '83, and I think I have 5 or 6 classmates here at CattleCon that's still deeply involved in the industry. But when we graduated, it was the '80s, tough times, high interest rates, and we were all told not to go back to our operations. And I think now, I think we should be encouraging our young people to get back in production agriculture. There's room for them. I think that's changed for me.
And thank goodness you didn't listen to that advice.
Well, I did for a while. I've been an ag banker, but I had double trouble having 2 jobs. But
Sure.
I
You didn't get too far away, though.
No, I never did.
Yeah.
I never did. I love and have the passion for this industry, and if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
Boy, I tell you, I'm having a hard time coming up with that specific thing that I had to unlearn. But I just
supply and
learned
demand curves still work the same
well,
way.
yeah, some of those things do, but on the other hand, this industry, I have argued for years and years, this is the most complex set of markets on the planet, and I believe that. This industry has got so many moving parts and so many dimensions of complexity, and so I'm a student every day, and I learn something every day if I just remember to pay attention. And so, every time you think you got it figured out, it don't stay figured out. And so you're constantly learning. And I think that's the watchword for everybody in this industry, is we're constantly learning. There's more things to get our hands around. this industry's bigger than anybody, and none of us can get our hands around it completely. But collectively, we get it figured out, and the basis for all of that is markets. Markets work. Markets coordinate a lot of stuff from people who don't necessarily know each other, and yet it's amazing if you think about it. The idea that you can go into a grocery store in this country any day of the year and find a piece of fresh beef that started in a process 2.5 years or more ago and ensured that it would be there today, that's pretty impressive. That's absolutely amazing that we can take for granted that it's going to be there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a testament to how well markets work and how well this industry works, despite how big and complex it is.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today to help us all kind of unpack a little bit about all those moving pieces and continue to be students. I think I left with even more questions. So.
No, yeah, we appreciate you guys, and I think we knew when we were putting this together, it's like this is going to be fun, and you guys all bring such unique perspective and experience and a background on how this industry does work from kind of some different seats, and so really appreciate you all, and in particular your industry leadership. I know each of you are industry leaders and give a lot of time and effort and to make all of us better. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
thank you.
Bet. Thanks for the opportunity.
What a fun conversation we got to have at the Cattle Industry Convention. As a reminder, if you ever want to check out real-time coverage when we're at events, follow us on our social media channels, Angus Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X, or Angus Media on TikTok. This has been the Angus Conversation, an Angus Journal podcast.